The studio lights glared as Melania Trump sat down for an exclusive primetime interview on a conservative news network. Her posture was poised, her expression unreadable, and her tailored white blazer seemed to radiate composure. As the cameras rolled, she smiled softly, engaging in light talk about her time as First Lady, current family updates, and political opinions. But then, the interviewer shifted the conversation toward rising Democratic voices, specifically naming Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Melania's tone subtly changed. A cool sharpness entered her voice. With a slight smirk, she leaned in and said, "Some people in Washington are broken. Well, they were not raised with the values this country needs." She paused deliberately, then added, "Take Jasmine Crockett, for instance. I question whether she even understands what it means to represent dignity. You know, moral upbringing matters." The host went silent for a beat, visibly uncomfortable, then tried to pivot. "Well, Congresswoman Crockett has been very vocal about," Melania cut in. "Vocal, yes, but there's a difference between loud and respectable." That line struck a chord across the airwaves. Within minutes, social media lit up. Clips of the interview were posted with captions like, "Did Melania just racially profile Jasmine Crockett? An unbelievable live TV moment." Hashtags like #MelaniaSlur, #DisrespectOnLive, and #StandWithJasmine surged through Twitter and TikTok. Millions watched, rewatched, and began to weigh in. Celebrities, activists, and politicians flooded timelines with outrage, calling the remarks tone-deaf, elitist, and racially charged. By midnight, what began as a calm interview had exploded into a national controversy. Jasmine Crockett sat in her Washington, D.C. office, surrounded by silence. Her aides had gathered around her, each one cautiously glancing at the television where Melania Trump's interview was being replayed for the third time. The words echoed in the room again: "A moral upbringing, not respectable, loud." Crockett didn't flinch. She watched the footage in full, arms crossed, jaw tight, saying nothing as the host attempted to deflect Melania's comments and move on. The silence after the clip ended was heavy. Finally, she turned to her communications director. "Pull every angle of that interview. I want transcripts. I want legal analysis. I want historical comparisons," she said calmly but firmly. Then she reached for her phone and called her legal advisor. "This isn't a peer issue," she said. "It's a legal one." Within the next few hours, her office buzzed into motion. Her legal team began documenting every piece of footage, every online reaction, every major media outlet's coverage. Constitutional lawyers and civil rights experts were brought into the loop. Her chief of staff whispered, "Are we really going to file?" Without hesitation, Crockett nodded. "We're not letting this slide. This isn't just an insult, it's defamation, and it reeks of coded racism." By early evening, Jasmine Crockett's legal counsel formally filed a lawsuit in federal court against Melania Trump for $100 million. The lawsuit alleged defamation, damage to reputation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, arguing that Melania's comments were not only targeted and harmful, but also laced with language historically used to demean black women in positions of power. Crockett released a short but searing public statement: "No matter how famous or powerful you are, you cannot weaponize stereotypes to tear down the dignity of others." This lawsuit isn't just about me. It's about sending a message that we are no longer tolerating this kind of behavior on live television or anywhere else. News outlets scrambled to cover the story. Anchors interrupted scheduled broadcasts. Social media exploded again. But this time, the focus shifted to Crockett's bold move. Her name began trending alongside words like courage, justice, and historic. And as the sun set over Capitol Hill, Jasmine Crockett stood firm, ready for the storm she had just summoned. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through both political and media circles. Within hours of the filing, every major news network was broadcasting round-the-clock coverage. Legal analysts were called in to break down the case, civil rights leaders weighed in with support, and conservative commentators rushed to Melania's defense. Social media became a digital battleground. While many hailed Jasmine Crockett's move as bold and necessary, others accused her of overreacting or playing the race card. The national divide deepened, and the spotlight only grew hotter. Melania Trump's team issued a brief statement the next morning, dismissing the lawsuit as frivolous and politically motivated. But there was no public appearance, no interview, no further explanation. The silence from Melania herself only fueled the speculation. Her allies within the GOP remained mostly tight-lipped, some clearly uneasy with the controversy now engulfing the former First Lady. Meanwhile, support for Jasmine Crockett continued to build. Crowds began gathering in front of the federal courthouse, holding handmade signs that read, "Dignity over defamation, we stand with Jasmine, and our voices matter." Civil rights activists, women's organizations, and public figures from across the political spectrum voiced their solidarity. Oprah Winfrey posted a short but powerful message: truth, courage, justice. Jasmine Crockett, unfazed by the media frenzy, held a press conference on the courthouse steps. With television cameras pointed at her and hundreds of supporters standing behind, she stepped up to the podium. Her tone was measured, her words deliberate. "This is not about publicity. This is not about politics. This is about the power of language and the consequences that follow when powerful people choose to use it carelessly." She paused, letting the words settle, then continued. "When a former First Lady makes comments on national television that question the moral upbringing and character of a sitting black congresswoman, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a targeted attack wrapped in polite words and historical bias. I will not be silent about Ida, and neither should any of you." The crowd erupted in cheers, her message echoing across headlines and social feeds. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted on Melania's legal team. Whispers circulated in legal circles that they were considering a settlement to avoid a prolonged court battle, one that could expose internal communications, depositions, and potential patterns of bias. As the media spotlight remained fixed on this historic legal showdown, one thing became clear: Jasmine Crockett had shifted the conversation. What began as an insult on live TV had become a national reckoning on accountability, race, and the limits of public speech. Weeks later, the courtroom in downtown Washington, D.C. was packed to capacity. Security was tight, reporters lined the sidewalks, and people stood in long lines just hoping to catch a glimpse of the historic proceedings. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but electric. Jasmine Crockett entered flanked by her attorneys, dressed in a deep navy pantsuit, her posture straight, eyes forward. Melania Trump arrived shortly after, her expression unreadable behind large sunglasses, escorted by her legal team. Though the cameras were barred from filming inside, journalists scrambled to report every detail. The courtroom fell silent as opening statements began. Crockett's attorneys outlined the case with precision. The language used by Melania Trump wasn't just offensive, it was calculated, derogatory, and rooted in a long-standing pattern of using veiled insults to demean black women in power. They presented linguistic experts who dissected the phrasing of Melania's comments, showing how terms like cloud and moral upbringing have historically been used to stereotype and undermine African American women in professional spaces. Several members of Congress were called as character witnesses for Crockett, testifying to her integrity, leadership, and the emotional toll the viral incident had taken on her and her family. One testimony in particular, delivered by a young black law student, stood out. She tearfully explained how watching Crockett take a stand inspired her to keep pursuing a career in public service. Despite the systemic challenges she faced, the courtroom was visibly moved. Melania Trump's defense was cautious. Her legal team argued that her comments were taken out of context, claiming she was referring to political conduct, not race or personal background. They painted her as a victim of media manipulation and political ambition. But under cross-examination, her story began to unravel. When asked if she regretted the comments, Melania hesitated, then gave a non-committal answer that many perceived as defiant. As the trial stretched on, the public outside remained vocal. Each day, the courthouse steps turned into a rally site, with poetry readings, music performances, and public speeches all centered around themes of truth, dignity, and justice. The case had become more than a legal battle, it had become a cultural moment. On the final day, Crockett stood to deliver a closing statement, speaking directly to the judge and jury. Her voice was steady. "This isn't just about what was said, it's about what it represents. It's about centuries of being told we're too loud, too angry, too unworthy in truth, were too powerful to ignore. If we allow this kind of language to go unchecked at the highest levels of influence, we tell every little girl who looks like me that her voice can still be silenced. As she exited the courthouse, the crowd erupted into applause. She didn't wave or pose as she simply nodded, eyes full of quiet resolve. The verdict hadn't been announced yet, but for many watching across the country, the real victory had already been claimed. Jasmine Crockett had drawn a linea and made history doing it.